Hello everyone, and welcome to the screencast for Chapter 4 in our STEM Challenge course. The main topic, the big idea in this chapter is how does all life get its energy? The two processes, one is called photosynthesis and one is called cell respiration. In this Chapter 4, there are 4 sections that we'd like you to read and outline and study, 4.1 through 4.4. Let's take a look at 4.1. So the lesson objectives here are why things need energy, and they're going to be talking about organisms called autotrophs, heterotrophs. There's your vocabulary. So autotrophs are any organism that makes their own food. An easy way to think about this are green plants. All green plants have an organelle inside the cell called a chloroplast that has a special compound in it called chlorophyll, and they have this amazing ability to capture sunlight. That's what we're going to talk about. Another name for autotrophs are called producers because they are producing energy. Heterotrophs, on the other hand, are living things that can't make their own food. For example, we are heterotrophs. We can't make our own food. We can't go out in the sun and create food. We're also, another name for us is consumers. A simplified diagram here shows this in action. Notice on the left-hand side there's the sun, which is allowing the grass to grow. Grass is the producer. It's eaten by the first consumer, a grasshopper, the second consumer, a frog. And that red line you see going around, this red line which moves from organism to organism, is the energy flow through this particular food chain. Two molecules that are important in this chapter are the molecule called glucose and ATP. Both are energy-rich molecules. Glucose is the molecule that's made by plants. Another molecule, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is another energy-rich molecule that's made by both plants and animals, and it's sort of like the gasoline for all of our cells. That's what supplies the energy. Initially, it's glucose that we take in, but then we turn that into ATP through cell respiration. So this diagram compares two organelles. This organelle right up here is called a chloroplast, and this organelle is where photosynthesis takes place. This organelle down here is a mitochondria. It's another small part of the cell, and this is where cell respiration takes place. This is an important diagram because water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide come into the chloroplast, and the process of photosynthesis creates glucose and a waste product, oxygen. That glucose is taken in by us, and we take in the oxygen to create ATP, the energy. On the next slide of our presentation, this is a plant cell where you can easily see the chloroplasts. Now, this link in your presentation goes out to an animation. That's what I'm going to tab over to right now. And I'm going to tab onto that, and I'm going to begin to play it. So each of those green circles within the cell is called a chloroplast. And your chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. That's where photosynthesis takes place. And you'll notice that the chloroplasts move around the cell. That's called cyclosis. The chloroplasts move around as the energy of sunlight hits them and as they produce photosynthesis. This is a really nice video. It's only about a minute long. Take a look at this and familiarize yourself with what's going on here. Chloroplasts taking in the sunlight. So in this slide, you'll notice that we have photosynthesis and cell respiration. This is a simplified diagram, and this is kind of the level that we would like you to know it in this course. Both photosynthesis and cell respiration are very, very complicated processes, and you'll see that in this diagram, but we don't want you to know it at that level for this course. So make sure when I point out in the presentation what level we want you to answer questions on. So here we have the sunlight of energy hitting the box of photosynthesis. Coming in is carbon dioxide and water, and coming out is the glucose, the energy-rich molecule, and a waste product of oxygen. Cell respiration, which happens in us and all of our cells to make energy, takes in glucose because we eat plants or plant byproducts. We take in oxygen, and we create ATP in all of our cells to make the energy that we use to power everything in our body. Here's another way of looking at it. Make sure you read about photosynthesis. This is the equation for photosynthesis. 6 carbon dioxide molecules, 6 water molecules plus light energy give us glucose. This is the formula for glucose, C6H12O6, and the waste product oxygen. In 4.2, we'll talk about sugar as food. And in this diagram right here, these are the 2 stages of photosynthesis. There are the light reaction and the Calvin cycle. All that I would like you to know for this diagram is that light comes in, is needed for the light reactions, and this is when the water molecule is split. Then the Calvin cycle is where we actually make the glucose. Here we talk about the structure of a chloroplast. This is an actual electron microscope shot of it. Notice that the chloroplast isn't very big. It's only about 1, well, in this case, that's the bar for 1 micron. They're actually about 5 microns wide. Much more complicated look at the light reaction of photosynthesis. I won't be asking you questions on this. Do not study this. Just know the 2 previous diagrams that I showed you. So this is going to be our focus animation in this chapter. It's called The Simple Story of Photosynthesis and Food. It's about 4 minutes long. We'd like you to watch it on the learning page and answer the questions. It's a well done animation. There's also a good animation from Paul Anderson on photosynthesis. I'd like you to watch about half of this. It's a 12-minute video. I'd like you to watch about 6 minutes of it, just so you can get a sense of what they're talking about here. Remember, photo means light reactions. Synthesis means to put together. Chemosynthesis, photosynthesis uses light. Chemosynthesis uses chemical energy and heat energy, and virtually all the life on our planet uses photosynthesis. However, in the 70s, we went down to the bottom of the ocean off of Costa Rica, and we discovered that there are communities of life that don't use sunlight, that use chemical energy and heat energy from the Earth's core. And we have a video on that. This is a diagram of what they found here. This is not a picture, but we have pictures in this particular video if you'd like to watch this. So virtually all life uses sunlight, but some uses energy from the Earth. And how giant tube worms survive. This is a video by Ed Young. Ed Young is the author of our book. He's a wonderful author, so please take a look at that as well. In section 4.3, we're going to talk about cell respiration, how we power our cells. Remember, plants make the glucose molecule for us. We then eat the glucose, and when we eat it, we rip it apart and create ATP in all of our molecules. So notice that we grayed out these last learning objectives. Don't worry about those. Make sure you understand these. Let's go to the next one. So these are the stages of cell respiration. Here's stage 1. It's called glycolysis, and that's when we can make energy, but we only make 2 ATP. There's the Krebs cycle where we can make a few more, and the oxidative phosphorylation is the 3rd stage. So 3 stages: glycolysis. Here's our glucose coming into the process. It's split. We make 2 ATP net from this, but then those molecules come into the Krebs cycle, and we end up with making, let me go back, sorry about that. We end up making a total of 38 ATP. Oxygen's surprising complex journey through the body is a wonderful animation at TED Ed. Please watch this as well. On this page, we begin to talk about anaerobic and aerobic respiration. This is a really interesting idea. Scientists think that glycolysis evolved before cell respiration. That's because the other stages need oxygen, and oxygen did not exist in the Earth's atmosphere about 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. So cell respiration that proceeds without oxygen is called anaerobic. If it needs oxygen, it's called aerobic. So please read these carefully. Here is a part of your text on the structure of mitochondria, which is the key to aerobic respiration. This is where ATP is formed within the cell, and it's this organelle, mitochondria. Read that carefully. Then section 4.4, the last section, is on anaerobic respiration, and we talk about fermentation, we talk about lactic acid and alcoholic fermentation. It's hard to believe, but it's yeast that gives us the alcohol in beer and wine. So read about fermentation. They'll talk about that and why that is important. This is an interesting diagram because this is the history of our Earth. Now I'm going to explain this a little bit. So the Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. Here is present day Earth. This is our atmosphere's composition. So in the beginning, way back here, our atmosphere was only hydrogen, helium, ammonia, and methane, a little bit of nitrogen in there. But watch what happens over time as we move from left to right. About 2 billion years ago, the amount of oxygen starts to increase in our atmosphere. And today, every time you take a breath, you're breathing in about 21% oxygen. Where that oxygen came from is really, really interesting. It came from microbes that learned how to photosynthesize water and put free oxygen into our atmosphere. Take a look at the advantages of aerobic respiration. The simple answer is that we get a lot more ATP out of aerobic respiration. Take a look at the advantages of anaerobic, and the answer there is you can create energy in places where there is not oxygen. A couple extra resources that we put in. This is a link to measuring the rate of photosynthesis in Elodea. Elodea is a plant. So this is a test tube with a plant. There's the amount of light. You can play with this. This is a really interesting simulation on how to change the rate of photosynthesis. There's also a great story that talks about how that free oxygen got into our atmosphere at this link by Penny Chisholm. So that concludes the screencast for Chapter 4. Remember, these are just quick overviews. Please read and study the Chapter 4, but also the other steps on the learning page. Good luck, and good luck with the quiz.